hard to overstate how big this win would be for the Raiders without their two best players.
The Raiders picked up the victory against the Cleveland Browns, but despite the fact that things are trending in the right direction, there are still some big changes to come. And head coach Antonio Pierce finally opened up about his controversial comments. So the Raiders went into this game at home against the Cleveland Browns with somewhat of a disadvantage. Of course, they were going to be without their starting linebacker Divine Diablo and also without Davante Adams, their best wide receiver. And the biggest name on this list was Max Crosby, no Mad Max. And actually, this was the first missed game by Max Crosby in his entire career. You also have starting tackle Thayer Mumford and Michael Mayer not in this game. So tons of starters, tons of guys who contribute to the team tremendously were not going to be in this game against the Browns. Now on the flip side, Deshaun Watson and the Browns were without their starting tackles still in this game, did not have their starting tight end David Njoku, and during the game they lost their center, so all the injuries kind of even things out. We'll get into what happened in this game, but obviously the Raiders came away with the W, and I was sort of surprised that even after the Raiders won the game, on Sunday Night Football, you still had the top NFL insiders talking about trade chatter with Davante Adams. Even though they won, you would think that, hey, that would all be put to the side. Clearly, the Raiders are trending in the right direction, but no, this was from Sunday Night Football, NBC, the pregame show. These are the top insiders in the NFL world talking about the fact that, hey, get ready for Davante trade chatter. Unless the Raiders are big-time contenders at the trade deadline in early November, November 3rd. Isn't that funny that it's right near the freaking election when we got to figure out if Davante Adams is going to be on the team or not? Well, it still seems like he's likely going to be traded.
Keep an ear open for chatter pointing to a possible Davante Adams trade in the next 5 weeks unless the Raiders emerge as clear contenders between now and then.
Now, the Raiders offense did not have their greatest game at all. Didn't score in the first quarter, didn't score in the fourth quarter. Gardner Minshew only had about 130 yards, and Zamir White had a costly fumble towards the second half of the game and really could have costed the Raiders the entire game. But we did see Minshew able to get the ball to an array of wide receivers, and we saw one guy emerge as one of the top wide receivers on the team, and we haven't seen this guy break out too much yet during the season, and that is none other than the speedy wide receiver Trey Tucker. This guy had tons of targets in this game, and you saw him get a touchdown on a reverse. I've been waiting to see the Raiders utilize this guy's speed, and on this play you saw the coordinator, you saw the team get creative utilizing him to get this touchdown. There was also another player who used to be a undrafted free agent practice squad type player, DJ Turner, who's been on the Raiders for quite some time. He was utilized in some of this jet sweep reverse running game style play, and he even got a touchdown of his own. Those were actually the 2 touchdowns of the day for the Raiders, which were reverses, and I was glad to see this because I feel like the Raiders have been running a vanilla, boring offense over the season, and with the absence of Davante Adams, you saw them get more creative and find different ways to score. And when we're talking about Davante Adams and the trade deadline, if you don't have the rock star quarterback who could just laser it in there, throw him those fade routes, get Davante Adams the football even though he's double covered, if you don't have that guy, then you gotta get creative. And everybody knows Davante Adams' contract is not feasible next year. The Raiders got to make a decision no matter what next season to trade him or restructure and re-sign his contract because it's inflated with a ridiculous cap number. So maybe even if they string together a couple wins here, most of the NFL analysts know that Davante Adams is probably going to be on his way out. Because yes, the Raiders did not have much success on the offensive side of the football, but this is a good Cleveland Browns defense. This is a good Cleveland Browns defense that absolutely clamped Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I know we don't think too highly of the Jaguars because they haven't won a freaking game yet, but still, this defense has been doing well, and I'm talking about this Browns defense throughout the season so far. And it was great to see Raider Nation able to experience a dub in this game, especially after the disastrous loss against Andy Dalton and the Carolina Panthers. You got this guy right here eating a leg of a Browns player. Hopefully that's not Deshaun Watson's recently massaged leg. Really, the defense won this game, and in my opinion, the defense had more setbacks in terms of injuries. You got no Max Crosby, no Divine Diablo, and you also don't have Marcus Epps, the safety and captain, who was recently placed on IR. He wasn't on that inactive list because he's on IR, but Patrick Graham got the dub. Tons of backup defensive linemen still getting it done, and on the final play, they sacked Deshaun Watson, and you see Patrick Patrick Graham celebrate, flexing in the booth after calling some great plays throughout this game. And really, the defense did win this game, but they also, and I have to keep it real, almost lost this game. In the fourth quarter, down only 4 points, Deshaun Watson was able to scramble and threw an absolute dart to a wide open Amari Cooper for a touchdown, but it was unfortunately called back due to a holding penalty. And you had the analysis and the analysts watching the game, and they were saying they did not think that was a significant hold by the center.
Oh, I don't like that call at all.
I mean, he
We
didn't
need
really
to get
grab
another
him.
angle of that. They called that a hold?
And that was the backup center who had got knocked out for the Cleveland Browns. And I have to say, I do agree with him. I did not think that was an egregious hold. And I feel like if that kind of call would have happened to the Raiders, I would have been incredibly pissed off. But hey, the refs have been screwing over the Raiders for several years. And yes, we finally got a good call. But that does show that this game was incredibly close and the Raiders could have easily lost this game. Because the offense was pretty lackluster, especially in the fourth quarter, one of our top players throughout this game was the freaking punter. The punter, AJ Cole. He was out there flexing throughout this game after he made some, and I will admit, amazing punts, pinning the offense inside that 5-yard line, flexing right there, a team captain. You love to see it. But is this a little too much? Do we like to see punters celebrate? I was worried at times that maybe AJ Cole was going to get an unsportsmanlike penalty for this type of celebration. It seems like he is now channeling his Marquette King vibes. Let's hope that does not lead to any penalties just because we got some amazing punts. And look, all eyes are on Antonio Pierce. This was a big game for him. And you saw him after the game, after getting the dub, not celebrating too much. I remember last year he had the famous AP chant celebration after beating the Denver Broncos at home, and he's yelling at the crowd, getting crazy. I think what we're seeing now, especially after last week, the embarrassing loss against the Carolina Panthers, a more humble Antonio Pierce. And I kind of like this. I think he's been, braggadocious and cocky throughout his tenure as the Raiders interim head coach. And look, he has had some good victories. He got that big victory against the Baltimore Ravens, big victory against the Kansas City Chiefs. Ugly victories, but still big victories nonetheless. However, I think he's now sort of calmed down. He definitely heard the noise this past week. He had tons of fans wanting this guy gone, especially after they blew it at home against the Carolina Panthers. Absolutely embarrassing. And look, even myself, I'm still skeptical of the guy. He has limited experience as a coach. It does seem like times he does get out-coached by his opponents. Did not happen in this game against the Cleveland Browns, but still, it's a week-to-week basis and everything could change. But for right now, he's making progress, and I think he knows he has to fight every single week to still prove it to the fans that he's the guy. Remember, Pierce had that blunder last week talking about how players made business decisions. And I honestly think that mistake may have actually been maybe worse than actually losing to the Carolina Panthers because, on some level, it's out of your control. The players play the plays. You're just the coach trying to get them prepared. But when he said that business decision comment after the game against the Carolina Panthers, really wasn't a good look because it felt like he was throwing people under the bus. And even if you have dirty laundry, you don't want to air out your dirty laundry in front of the entire world. And we see Pierce, after this win against the Cleveland Browns, regret making that comment.
It was a trying week, to be honest, right? There's a lot of, hoopla stuff. And everybody started with me with my comments, and, I apologize to him for that. Don't want to be a distraction that way.
And I think that's great for Antonio Pierce to apologize to the team, to own up to his mistakes as well, because yes, that did add extra drama to the team. When you have the media able to glom on to a story like that, it's going to just make things more difficult no matter what. And we're still wondering, who is this business decisions person? You got Michael Mayer still not playing, the second round tight end under Josh McDaniels due to personal reasons. Some people speculate, is he the guy, or does he actually have some personal drama going on in his life, and that's why he's unavailable to play? You also had Jack Jones, the starting corner, who has a deep relationship to Antonio Pierce. Pierce coached him in high school and college. He did not play in, I believe, the first quarter and second quarter of this past game. You started seeing him more in the second half. So maybe that was part of the business decisions type of discipline. But I think Antonio Pierce has learned his lesson. He's still a rookie head coach, that he's not going to make that mistake again. He's not going to air out that dirty laundry in front of everybody else again. And you're seeing more changes happen with this Raiders team, and I think it's for the better. I did not like the whole dance-offs at practice. I think there's been a little too much cool vibes. We're all hanging out and having fun type of stuff, which was cool when we were moving on from Josh McDaniels last year. You wanted the players to have fun because Josh McDaniels was cracking the whip and such a crazy authoritarian that nobody liked. But now that we're in the first full year of Antonio Pierce, and now that the Raiders have been losing some games that they should win against the Chargers, against the Panthers, I think they've now been sort of saying, hey, let's be more disciplined. And so the Raiders have been canceling the rookie dance-offs at practice. We'll see if they continue to have these rookie dance-offs, and we'll see if they continue to have these cigars. They had cigars after beating the Baltimore Ravens, but we did not see any cigars or hear about any of that after beating the Cleveland Browns. And I think that should be the way to go, because last year the Raiders were having cigars after they beat anybody. I mean, even the Chargers with Easton Stick, you're having cigars after that. Now I think since they've hit some adversity, since they've made some mistakes throughout this 2024 season, they're going to wait. They're going to wait until they really pull something big off before they have a cigar. Another note about Davante Adams, but before that, Antonio Pierce was asked about Raiders fans and how we're very passionate. We'll flip. We'll be angry one day. We'll be happy the next day, right? After we lost to the LA Chargers, it was like, get rid of this guy. You beat the Baltimore Ravens, and it's like, hey, let's give this guy a chance and see what he has. Now, Antonio Pierce was asked about it, and he says, you know, Raider Nation, how Raider Nation is, man. They love you, they hate you, and then they come back and love you again. And look, that's how it is in the NFL. It's a week-to-week league. The Raiders play the Denver Broncos next. This is actually crazy when you take a look at it. The Denver Broncos absolutely whooped the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 3. They creamed them by multiple points. And then just this past Sunday, the Buccaneers obliterate the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a week-to-week league. Things change. It goes up and down like crazy. We thought the Denver Broncos were a joke of a team after the first few games, and then they've beaten the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 3. And then just this past Sunday, the Denver Broncos narrowly, only by a little bit of points, beat the New York Jets. So that is why this upcoming game against the Broncos is going to be so interesting. Two teams that have had a lot of up and down this season. In about a month, we're going to find out what's happening with Davante Adams. And here's a key thing that was let out right before the game on Sunday, before we had that report that the Raiders are still going to likely consider trading Davante Adams, especially if they are not a serious contender. The Raiders actually rejected multiple teams that approached them this summer in July about inquiring about Davante Adams and if he was available via trade. And the Raiders considered an Adams trade a non-starter and turned away teams before an offer could even be made. This tells me that the Raiders have been playing hardball this whole time. They've made it seem like, hey, there's no way we're going to trade this guy. Seems like things are kind of changing now that we're in the middle of the season based on that report from NBC that I showed you earlier. But this makes me optimistic that if the Raiders do trade Davante Adams, it's not going to be for crumbs. They've been playing hardball this whole time. Hopefully they get significant draft capital for Davante Adams and they don't end up just giving this guy away for free. My name is Wi-Fi Willie. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.